Hello again, everyone, and happy weekend to you. This is Wes with Pikes Peak Trades and the latest edition of Stocks A to Z for the week of trading that has ended now March 12th, 2021. And I would wonder if you would be anticipating the subject and the message of this video being very, very bullish after having heard me express optimism during the recent sell-off that we were going to be able to find a bottom, that this wasn't the top, and then expressing this week that we were close to that bottom, and then communicating on Thursday my call that the bottom was in. Wondering if you're thinking, well, now the projection just has to be really bullish going forward. I need to say that I need to temper that optimism with a balance of evidence here. So I'm not retracting the bottom call. I do think that the bottom is in, but I'm going to point out some things for balance, especially in the short term, just some interesting observations in case we actually see a bumpy road, specifically early in this coming week. All right, so as we always do, I want to get you through weekly charts. Let me get back to here. And I show you the weekly charts because we have to be continually reminding ourselves of the longer term trend. And we had the previous week that had ended here, March 5th, we had a loss here of this bull channel that had essentially controlled price all the way since the March 2020 lows. But this week, a pretty resounding recovery. So in the S&P 500, we're now back solidly above all of the important moving averages, back into the lower half of this bull channel, and everything is looking good from a weekly perspective. I would point out that eventually this very long drawn out weekly RSI divergence, it is going to set at some point a very major top. And because of the duration and also the depth of the pullback the last week of Feb and the first week of March, I'm extending my timeline out a bit. So instead of maybe anticipating that top sometime in April or May, I think a June to July timeframe makes a little bit more sense. Now, you're also still going to see some of the bearish colors and counts still on the chart. And that's mainly because of tech. That tech still is about 6% away from its all-time highs, even though the Dow and the S&P, XLF, and IWM are all at new all-time highs. We still have to leave the possibility that something surprising could happen to the downside. That first chart that you saw was the daily. And on the daily, it looks to me like the possibility of a new bull channel. But remember that I've talked about how appropriate channels require at least 2 touches top and bottom. And we haven't had that on the bottom channel. So I'm leaving in the possibility that at some point, maybe even soon, could we see a bottom channel hit? Okay, and the suggestion would be that it could happen early this week if we've reached here a first wave high off of this low, which would require that we can count it as 5 waves up, or a possibility that the intermediate low for wave 3 is actually tracing an ABC expanded flat. And so that possibility would bring it into the alignment of a possible bearish count on QQQ, and it would also then give IWM and XLF the chance to sell off harder if that's actually what we see. Now, I would give that a low probability. I don't think that will actually be the path, but I do actually think it's possible that we've seen an A, a B, and we might see a C wave down here to complete this subdegree wave 2 that would essentially backtest the breakout of the bear channel and these really, really crucial and important 8 and 21 EMAs. Okay, so for that to happen on the shorter term time frames, we would need to have some evidence of 5 waves up. And if I go first to futures, we can count 5 waves up. So 1 with an expanded flat 2, and 3 either with a running flat or a simple zigzag to here. That doesn't matter so much to me, into a possible 5th wave up into this minuet 1 top. And now are we seeing an A, B, and a C yet to come? I personally think, especially looking at futures, that this right here is very choppy. And I do think it actually has a look and a count a little more like a bear flag than the kickoff of another impulsive wave up to, well, price here would beg 4,000 on the S&P. Okay, but that's also why you see the count there in purple. You're going to see that consistently throughout the video. We've got to leave in the possibility that the brief sell-off that happened Friday just set a sub-degree low, and the buying into the close is just going to get extended early in the week. You'll notice, because that's in purple, my primary count is actually that we're going to get a pullback. Okay, and I'll try to show you the wide variety of evidence for that. I don't want to let just any one chart bias and influence my opinion. I need to see a confluence of evidence together. And I certainly think here in the minis, in the futures, we could be seeing an ABC down. Now, again, support, I'd already shown you on the daily in the 38.70 to 38.90 range. That coincides pretty nicely with the 38% fib. Here, that 200 period MA at 38.60, it's possible it could dip a little bit lower. If it does, it's got a really great look for a right shoulder here that's higher than the left shoulder and then the head that formed that important low. So that would present an excellent buying opportunity to buy a reversal. And I had tweeted this out, that I wonder if we could be anticipating the possibility of a lot of head fakes in this, at least the initial phase of this rally up, to try to sideline as many traders as possible. That just seems like something that the market would do, is to create the doubt. Is the bottom actually in? Are we going to reverse hard and create a fresh low? And I'm thinking a tricky thing would be to start with some red on Monday to raise that doubt. Okay, getting into S&P cash here, and you're going to see what could just be consolidation here above the breakout at 39.14. That could be the back test already in and not require the channel back test, and that would be my purple count. And the purple count that you see here and that you're going to see on individual names would just actually imply that Monday, Tuesday would just be extremely bullish, because we would be in continuation moves in a lot of these names within an Elliott Wave 3, which you would know from our Elliott Wave discussions is the most bullish wave. We leave the possibility of the ABC down, okay, which I am leaning towards as my primary count. Okay, so let's try to build a little bit of that body of evidence. Let's get into the Qs on the weekly, and they just pushed right up against that broken channel. And that could be a sign of resistance. It also just could be setting the stage for the break back in. You're going to notice that the red count in the Qs is a little more bearish than what you just saw in the S&P as far as degree go. And that just coincides with the fact that tech has just absolutely been weaker. Okay, I want to also look here at the Nasdaq on the weekly, and it did just hold on its pullback. It held not only this intermediate wave high, it held this lower channel, put in an inside week, consolidating, it looks like above the 21-week EMA. So I don't have the bear count on here because, again, I do think the lows are in. But on the short term, could we be possibly seeing evidence of a move down early in the week? And you're going to see it just like the S&P, the possibility of an A, B, C into this minute wave 2 that again would back test the channel breakout, would probably dip into the channel, back test this moving average. Our clue is going to be, obviously, if we just move up and this gap automatically closes, that's definitely going to shed some doubt on an ABC move down. And again, that would be very, very bullish continuation. You'll see that in individual names. Okay, want to get through IWM and XLF because as the evidence continues to show, it's really these two that I'm probably the most concerned about. Obviously not concerned on the weekly. This weekly is far extended above its 8 EMA on IWM, but wow, an incredible week, up strongly above 7%. We look into the daily, and on the daily, we just see this continued overextension from the 8-day EMA. And that almost always has a tendency to pull it back. And it's possible that the extension just continues like it did in the early part of Feb, where it ran up green. Here, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days in a row. And so what are we on here? 1, 2, 3, 4. And it absolutely could just keep going and just take it all the way up here to my target just below 240. Okay. At some point, there will be a pullback towards that EMA. So the question is, would it be happening now? Okay. And you can also see, like in the S&P, the potential of an expanded flat if things are surprisingly bearish. But again, I think low probability. But I want you to take a look at the hourly chart. So we're going to see two interesting things. These old channel rails, I always like to keep them and extend them as far as I find them useful, because you never know when, in conjunction with price action and other indicators, they could be forming an important resistance level. So I want you to go back here to the end of January. When this rail broke down, we set a low. We had support. When this provided support, we had kind of this little bounce, but then a breakdown. We had a loss and a breakdown. We moved up to it and the rejection into the recent low, and we're right back at that rail. Put that together with what looks like the same kind of RSI divergence on the hourly chart in overbought territory as we had at the beginning of Feb. And I've got a little bit of caution here that it may be time for small caps to take a rest. So specifically after this massive move, for them to come back and simply backtest this channel breakout. And that would coincide really nicely with the 200 period MA here. It's going to coincide nicely on the daily with just a test, I think, of either the 8 or the 21. And so that's kind of what I'm looking at. And looking at that as being overextended, overbought with divergence at resistance on the technicals, I think a little bit of evidence is showing we might get some weakness. Now, if not, then as I indicated, it's just going to keep running all the way up until 240 as the price on the daily chart suggested. So let's look at financials. So financials also, this is the weekly, just an incredible weekly extension above the 8 EMA, a possibility of a much more significant top that I'll show you on the short term. Otherwise, just continuation up to my next target for this wave 3, which is above 37. Now, we get to a really interesting candle. So this gap up red doji candle could be considered a topping candle. Now, it moved into, on its low price, the high price of the previous day. So It's not the possibility of the bearish abandoned baby pattern, if you've heard of that. That's not here because the low wasn't entirely above the previous day's candle on Thursday, but it's got an interesting topping look in what could be this rising wedge. Okay, so again, it's overextended, and we get into our 60-minute. And just like IWM, we see that declining momentum as prices wedged up. And this actually internally counts pretty well as an ending diagonal. So I just want to balance, the optimism that I shared Wednesday and Thursday with just the possibility that we could see some weakness on Monday, possibly into Tuesday, and the possibility of maybe some surprising weakness. But again, I do think that we've seen the major lows. And whatever we do see for the pullback, I think is going to be viable. So now what I want to do is take you through those individual names, because I do see some great setups that would be in place on any pullback. So let's get into our tech. And obviously, we're looking at some serious lag in these tech names. Apple certainly being one, just barely above its 34-week EMA, has not been able to crack back above its 21. So there still is a valid bear count that would take Apple down. Into the daily now on Apple. And we're looking here at just the inability, again, to get over the important MAs. So still fighting against that previous gap area. It did get itself over this past week back inside this broken bull channel, which is absolutely a positive. So what could we be seeing on the short term? So on the short term, just like S&P, just like Qs, the possibility of an A, B, C down into that wave 2. Okay, now if I'm wrong, and we get just a bullish blast off, that too is already in. And then I think we'll see Apple just take off. I think at that point, it's within a wave 3. You'll see a breakout. If we get this, a breakout with a back test of this channel is going to be your entry. So that could occur early in the day on Monday. Maybe that's in like the 122.5 to maybe 122.75 area on a back test. Otherwise, I would definitely consider if we see support hold just beneath this wave A price, would consider that to be a place that you could add on the reversal while other people are expecting more downside. Let's keep marching through some tech names and we get to Amazon. So Amazon, like Apple, still beneath its 8 and 21 week, did recapture here the middle part of this bull channel. And on the daily, just like Apple, it's just bumping right up against resistance. So it's right up against this horizontal pivot right at about 30.90. It captured the 8-day, but it has significant resistance. It just has stacks of resistance above it. So in the short term, possibility of a different degree progression. So I think here I'm leaving the possibility that Amazon could just close that gap and keep moving up into its first minor leg. And I've put in blue the possibility of that ABC down. I'm not sure, and this is not one that I would have traded on a pullback that actually does hit this 200 period MA. I would get interested. I'm not going to chase a runaway move, just knowing, I think here, the layers of resistance that are above. But what I would point out on Amazon is if price breaks 3163.52, this version of the red bearish count would be dead. And so that obviously would be good confirmation that this actually did set a very, very important intermediate term low. Okay, let's look at Facebook. And Facebook of these tech names is the healthiest. So we see a relatively shallow pullback during the tech sell-off, and we see here a weekly close above all of its moving averages. Okay, we get into the daily, and we're going to notice on the daily the possibility of this rectangular consolidation breakout. So Thursday a breakout, but it got pinned right against this rail of resistance and a fallback. It did hold and close above its MAs and closed above that box. So it is much, much more likely that we're going to see confirmed breakout above in Facebook. And this one, again, from a technical perspective, much healthier than the other names that are comparable. And we get into here at short term. And this, again, is going to indicate a little bit of indecision on my part. So do we have a 1, 2, 3, 4? And if we get the blast off, it's going to be big, as I anticipated with Apple and just with Amazon, that if this goes up, I think we'll see it break out strongly, probably above 280. Otherwise, here's that ABC. So is this move off the low early on Friday? Is it a bear flagging ABC up to this subdegree B? And that's kind of what I'm suggesting when we look at the whole body of evidence from everything we've seen thus far. But because of its relative strength and the fact that it's already broken above this consolidation, I would certainly leave the possibility that this could just run. Okay, let's look at Tesla to finish these big tech names. And Tesla, just like Apple, just like Amazon, fighting to get above its 21-week EMA back into the middle part of the channel, but still capped here 2 weeks in a row by its 8 and 21, not quite all the way up into the 0.618 fib off of its high to its low. We get into Tesla on the daily. Okay, and we're going to see it's moved back into the middle part of this channel. We've got here a move that held on Friday, the 8 EMA, with the possibility when we get to the short term that we've got one more pop. So I had tweeted this out right at the end of the day, using this as the example of which way is this symmetrical triangle going to break. Is it a wave 4 that's going to break bullishly? It's poised to do that. So a breakout back test just like Apple would certainly be tempting to buy. Or are we going to see it break to the downside? And that would be that consistent count for a wave 2 low across the board that I've suggested in many places. Okay, so big tech, I think still some very compelling things to watch. I am anticipating that if the bullish resolution continues, that money does flow back into tech and into growth. And that's where I want to show you on some next charts. So we get to Boeing, and now obviously not tech and growth, but the first one on this, just a phenomenal move. What I want to point out in Boeing is the possibility of significant resistance off of its all-time high all the way through the 2020 top, and it's approaching it. And so I think Boeing right in that maybe 275 up to its here the 200-week MA, 275 to 285, expecting some significant resistance here in Boeing. So we look onto the daily, and this is as it's moved out of this beautiful channel into an acceleration channel. It's fibbed really well into what could be wave 3 with the wave 4. But, I wouldn't stand much in the way of this one. It's I think, just going to keep rocking all the way up until we see that resistance right in that 275 to 280 area. On the short term, you're going to see just that rocket out. Look at this. This is a textbook Elliott wave impulse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 impulse up right into that 3 fib. And could it keep going? It absolutely could. It is extremely overbought. Would it be time for some rest And that's what I'm suggesting could play out here along with the other indices. Let's look at some other names. I really like the possibilities of BYND. I had shared this and tweeted this out. It's just right at a really, really important pivot. And that pivot has been the site of a false breakout, a false breakout, a false breakout, 4 times a false breakout. If it moves and sticks, I think we're going to see BYND moving up to really, really lofty prices. A little bit more zoomed in here on the daily, you're just going to see that clustering resistance right at that pivot. Could it be setting up something like this where it just needs to move up, back test, and then rocket? That's why I've got that highlighted. I'm wondering if that could be happening soon. So DraftKings, really, really, really strong. Look at this week. Over 20% on DraftKings. You do want to note that it has touched the top of this channel, which has resulted in some pulling back. So we get into the daily, and you're going to see just squeezing up right up against it. And I'm wondering if the general market does pull back, are we now even more nested into a 1, possibly a 2? So leaving that as the possibility. Otherwise, this wave 3 is just going to continue to run with targets at 80 and higher. Okay, I still like Netflix. So Netflix did not set a lower low on the big tech pullback. Its 1-2 count is still valid. Yes, it's taking a long time, but it's still in play. And on Netflix, if we're looking at a nested 1-2, any move that pulls back to test maybe 514, 515, maybe even a little bit lower, this MA is a place that I'm going to look to buy because it is now looking to establish a new bull channel. And I would look for the opportunity on a pullback to get in on Netflix. I also like the opportunity here in ROKU. So I think ROKU has set a very important intermediate wave 4 low. Looking into the daily, I'm seeing a nested 1-2. And these are the ones that you start to drool about. Into the short term, if we just blast off, it's because this purple 2 is already in. And like I explained in Apple and Tesla, this potential bull flag here, and I say potential because it hasn't actually hit a second time, which is why I'm leaving that possibility. But if this was just a resistance rail and it just breaks up and back tests and goes, that's going to be the opportunity there on ROKU to enter. Okay, we'll go ahead and do the Z on Zoom because it's on this tab. And Zoom here just with a really nasty sell-off. It's barely fighting to get above its 8 EMA. It still isn't there yet. I'm wondering if Zoom needs one more resting pullback. So has it set its first leg up? But maybe we need a little bit more pullback on Zoom, and that would be synonymous with the rest of the market if we see it. One more tab of some really compelling plays. And if we're going to see bullish resolution continue out into the early summer to the targets in QQQ and the S&P that I'm looking at, then semiconductors have to get out and get in front. They have to be part of this move. And that leaves us with NVIDIA and AMD, the two that I like to chart. So I think we've seen an expanded flat here that's put in the low on NVIDIA. And it is now working to get back into its broken bull channel. And that's exactly where it turned around on Thursday. Now, is the pullback done? Are we just going to see it rocket up in a wave 3? Okay, and again, we've got the possibility of the purple 2 already in. And what would be your clue? Well, this is pretty simple. This is your resistance rail. So breaking above 522 with the back test would be an awesome place to enter. Otherwise, look for some gaps to fill. We've got this gap to fill down into a typical fib. That would be the other place to load up if the market's a little more fearful and you want to try to catch maybe what could be at that point a contrarian play. Let's look at AMD. So AMD also fighting to get back within its broken bull channel, right at its 34-week EMA. So it is still weak technically, but I think it's got the possibility of moving strongly up. And into the daily, it's like NVIDIA. So have we seen a 1-2 already, or will we get a slightly lower retest here? So there in the short term, is this an A? Was this a bull flagging B? And will it work down here to try to cover this gap? So that would be an opportunity again on a gap touch fill to try to get that entry. Okay, one that was absolutely a darling this week. So Palantir up almost 12.5%, fighting up against its pretty young 8-week EMA. And you're going to see I have very, very optimistic targets on Palantir based on what I think is a primary 1 up, primary 2 down. So into the daily, and you're going to see really, really healthy action. Right up and out of the channel, above its 8.21, could possibly face a little bit of short-term resistance. You'll see that on the short-term chart at the 50 MA. And you're going to see that would coincide really nicely with one of these fib targets. But I'm also wondering, would we be seeing more of an internal 1 and 2? And so if we get the Monday, Tuesday pullback, I would be ready for Palantir just to set that nested 1-2 that could just take it back as a back test of that 200 period 15-minute MA. Okay, last one, and a name that I really also like here is C Limited, SE. I think it is in this kind of expanding. This would be its intermediate 5. I do think it's moving towards a cycle top based on what I'm charting, but I think it has a long ways that it can run. And on its daily, we're going to see that it just bounced right off that active lower rail, which was a really good sign that the selling would stop. Fighting to get back above its MA cluster. Pretty nice bullish looking hammer. That would have been a great day trade, by the way, on SE. And that day trade would have been on this retreat. That tag of the broken channel, that would have been an awesome day trade. And you know that I've told you that my market hours and times are limited now. I was not watching the markets to see it. That would have been an awesome one. I would have exited by the end of the day with the possibility that this still could be an A, B, C. So if we get SE back down to test the 222 area, that is a place that I would want to buy. Again, as you've seen, is consistent. If we just blast off, it's because it's right in the middle of a wave 3. And I think it wouldn't be too long after that that we can see SE challenge all-time highs. I think certainly into the 250s if the market just decides to go. All right, so I hope you found some balance in the video. I was not able just to be uber bullish based on some of the evidence that's out there suggesting that we could actually get that early week Monday, Tuesday weakness. Of course, with the uncertainty, I was not willing to over leverage myself one way or the other. I hope that you also played it cautious, because just coming out of these potential bottoms, as you can see, we've had a lot of fits and starts. There's been moves up, moves back, especially in tech and growth. I do actually expect that to continue. And so as always, it's going to be exciting, and wish you the best for the rest of the weekend. Hope you have a wonderful week of trading, and I'm happy to try to help you out and enjoy it right there with you along the way.